Okay, we are live on YouTube. I can close this out. Got it. Record. Nope, that's not it. Record.
Can Bob hear us? And
Bob, you can hear us, right?
Yep, I can hear you, Virginia. I can hear you, Virginia. Thank you.
thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Borough Park Summit, our work session on May 3rd, 2023. In attendance, we have Mr. Beston.
Here.
Ms. Lopez. Present. Ms. Zimmer was absent. Solicitor Hayes. Present. Mr. Mitchell.
Here.
Mayor Kelly is not here. Ms. Kehoe.
Here.
Mr. Jenkins.
Here.
Mr. Shields.
Here.
Steve Jones is not here. First item on our agenda, which is one of our hot ticket items in the borough. And we just had our town hall meeting a week ago. For all the residents together to see what direction they would like us to go with this. And we actually had a ballot for them. There was 4 options they had to choose from. And I believe Virginia can let us know what the.
Correct. Tonight, we're merely voting to accept the bid and which term we want, the 3 with 2 optional
Exactly.
years or the 5 with 2 optional years. Then in the regular meeting, I wanted to ask council to see about maybe putting together a committee to do some research with me on the cost and the reality of the 4 options.
Sure.
By far, though, more than 50%, the vote was to allow Mascaro to bill the entire amount and take it out of our taxes, which would mean a reduction in property taxes. So that is theoretically the starting point, but we've got a lot of talking to do before we can commit in any way. So tonight's vote is really, I have a contract of Mascaro's bid. They were the only bidder. So we either vote to accept it or not. And if so, which term?
Has everybody had an opportunity to go over that various bids?
So really, all we're deciding is between a 3 and a 5 year contract,
Correct.
Because it's obvious we're gonna choose the first option, which is trash weekly, recycling bi-weekly, bulk once per week.
Right.
Yeah, that was the obvious. It's the least expensive and the most benefit. So there's
Right.
Billy. You think I
We would be continuing exactly what we have now.
correct, keeping the same service that we have, the question merely being the term of the contract. And changing the services that we have actually would not benefit us, so there's no reason to give anything up.
In my opinion, I think we should do the 3 with the 2 optional years. That's the lowest priced. I think there's a difference of about $50,000 for the first 2 years, 40, 20, and then the 5th year it's the same. A long-term contract, I guess there is some certainty with that, but 7 years is a long time. Hopefully things will get better. 5 years gives us an opportunity to lock in. And this also gives future borough. We don't want to tie the hands of future borough councils if they want to go some a different way. So in my opinion, I think the 3 and the 5 with the 2 optional years is the better option.
Let me just say this, Madam President, if it's okay. Virginia, historically,
Hang on, Sam, I'll make sure you speak before the vote. Go ahead.
I know we've done long contracts.
Yes.
Historically, have they worked out better for the borough?
The last time we did a 7-year contract with Mascaro, it was huge savings. By the 7th year, we were way below what anybody in the area was billing for sewer, for trash, I'm sorry. So yes, we did find a benefit. I know Sam wants to talk, and the reason Sam wants to talk is he wants to explain why he feels we would benefit from a longer term. which is interesting that they're actually supporting us extending the term rather than locking down. I know there's a benefit to them in security, but there's also a gamble that Sam is going to tell us about. Jerry, do you mind if we have Sam get up and say?
No. Please.
And Sam Augustin, Director of Sales with Mascaro. Tonight I have with me Ryan Gibney, our sales manager, and Michael Alcavazi, who serves as Sparrow every week in terms of, or every week for trash and every other week for recycling. And I do respect what the councilman has brought up about the 3 years. You guys deal with a lot of different purchases, and you have to be concerned. Obviously, this is a economy that has really changed over the past 3 years. But, you know, I spend all of my time in the garbage business. I understand industry. I understand inflation, and I understand what's coming down the road. And the increases in our business have been extraordinary, as you know, from the past 3 to 5 years, not only in this borough, but all throughout Eastern Pennsylvania. We don't expect it to get any better. Mascaro, as you know, we were the only bid. Nobody, you know, national companies do not want to put their names on any contracts that last over a certain period of time. They just do not want to do it, okay? Because of fuel, because of disposal. And one of the biggest issues down the road is going to be landfills, okay? Landfills in Eastern Pennsylvania. We have a landfill down in Berks County that we feel secure with for the next 30 years. Okay, the Naples landfill, you know, as you know, got a permit for many more years. We've had a contract with the Naples since 1985. We continue to have a contract with them. We're very secure with the Naples. We also have a landfill above Bloomsburg and 2 landfills in West Virginia that we can utilize if we have to. We don't feel we're going to have to in the next 5 to 7 years. However, we see landfills as a big problem coming up in the next 5 to 7 years. And also the leachate issue is becoming a big issue now in Eastern Pennsylvania because a lot of the sewer plants are being purchased by the Aqua Americas of the world. And another company is, I can't think of the name of it, but they're buying the sewer treatment plants all over Eastern Pennsylvania, raising the leachate costs for all of the landfills. I would heavily recommend 5 years with 2 1-year options to secure your cost. We feel comfortable with it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have bid it, but we did. And obviously, you can take the 3 years. I would recommend the 5 years. And most other municipalities are securing contracts for as long as they possibly can. Okay, things are not going to get any better in the garbage business. And you know how much this has gone up since your last contract. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. We're here tonight just because I want to let you know how much we respect Clark Summit. This is a big contract. You spend a lot of dollars on waste removal, okay? And we take this contract very serious with its service. And in fact, we've had your contract for many years, and we wish to continue. So thank you for your time.
Does anybody have any questions at all?
I think what Sam says makes a lot of sense, especially with, and we've seen in our own area in recent years how DEP has come down and how hard they've come down. Certainly makes a lot of sense from where I'm sitting. And I agree that the 5 year with the 2 year extension, I think that's the safest way for us to go, where we can guarantee that we're not going to be in this situation in 2 years where we're trying to figure out what are we going to do? Are we going to raise the taxes? How are we going to bill? How are we going to do this? It just seems to make a lot more sense.
If I might speak, I don't have a vote, and my concerns aren't going to be the same as yours because I'm not an elected official from Clark Summit. So I'm not worried about the length of the contract tying up other councils. But from the office perspective, when we went from 7 years to 3 with 2 additional years, the thought process was that the price of gas had shot up so badly that it was bound to go down. And that's why we didn't go as long. And we're now looking at prices that have not gone down. So if we were, if we had to go 7 years, we would be much better off. And the last time we did 7 years, we benefited immensely. But because it's only a 5-year commitment, you don't have to take those last 2 years. But it is binding council. But we also know that for the next 4 years, council's not changing significantly. So.
Well, Madam President, if you don't mind, it also helps with the budget, figuring out the money, because you are now locked into a possible 7 years. So when you and the finance committee do the budget, and you're able to do it over a 7-year period, which I'm sure would help your job. Okay.
My feeling on this is this is unfortunately, it's not a good contract. I mean, this is right now, it's a bad time to be going into the garbage business. And we would be locked in for 3 years. So we would have 3 years and we'd have an option for another 2 years. So I think 5 years is plenty of time to see if it works and see where the world is. I'm not a global economist. I don't know what the future is going to be. I don't think when we did this last time, we knew where it was going to be, but we do have the option. So we could, be consistent for 5 years. We know what we can get for 5 years. And I think that's more than enough time to sort of see where we are and be able to budget and go from there.
If I may, I'm in agreement with Bob, and I think if there were savings to be had over the first 5 years in a 7-year contract, it'd be a different story, but we actually would pay more for the first 4 years in the 7-year contract. And then we would save about $500 in year 5, as opposed to the 5-year contract. So it actually saves us money over the next 5 years to stick with a 3-year agreement with 2 option years, which I'm sure is, that makes sense from your perspective, because you're sort of spreading out your risk over a longer period of time. But, one of the things that strikes me about this process that really concerns me, that I hope over the next 3 to 5 years changes, is we only have one bidder. And that's no disrespect to Mascara. You guys have done a great job for us, but, lack of competition also drives up prices. I'd be really curious, out of all the other municipalities in Lackawanna County that bid these out in the last 2 years, how many also have one bidder? I'm guessing it's a pretty high proportion. And somebody's got to give here in that regard over the next several years. I think I think we, over a 5-year period, have an opportunity to see how that shakes out. That just concerns me. The lack of competition is a little puzzling to me. And you all know the business better than I do. But I think that's a real concern, that something has to change. And if that continues, I think somebody a lot higher up than us needs to start to question, why is that? Why is there no competition in this industry? Because that is also not good for the prices at the end of the day that we all face. So I would be in favor of extending the 3-year agreement. We need to make sure that we do take advantage of our option years. We shot ourselves in the foot this time around and lost the opportunity to take 2 optional years that would have saved us a lot of money over the next 18 months. We need not to make that mistake again. But that would be my vote, is to go with a 3+2 contract.
Judge, my only concern is, I think we all realize that when Mascaro came back with their contract, the increase was 77%. So will that happen again in 3 years? I'm not saying 77%, but is it going to be another jaw dropper in 3 years? If we do the 5 years, then we know where we're at. I just worry, I think we're all surprised, with all due respect, when the bid came back 77%. So if we do it for 3 years and it seems like I've done this before, nobody wants to put a bid in. So we're left with Mascaro's. So I worry that in 3 years, Mascaro may come back with another huge increase. At least with a 5-year contract, we know where we stand for 5 years.
Well, to be clear though, we know where we are with a 3-year contract for 5 years if we take advantage of our 2 options, which this time around we failed to do and it cost us money. We need to make sure we don't do that again, but we have 5 years at minimum, even with a 3-year contract, if we adhere to our dates properly.
Jerry, I know Ronnie was trying to say something earlier.
I was just gonna say the same sentiments, Josh. It seems Mascaro has a monopoly on it, and my concern is if they continue to have that monopoly, we're gonna be in the same position we are in now within 5 years, and that's terrifying. I don't see more competition coming in within the next 5 years.
As in ever so far.
It hasn't so far. It seems that they've really cornered the market and we're over a barrel, and I just don't want to continue to be over a barrel.
Jerry?
Also, they probably don't want to compete against us, Carol, because we've had so much good feedback from all years with them. So Stan, if you could address
Well,
that.
the first thing is I respect every opinion here,
Sure.
but the only thing I want to challenge is this. Mascaro hasn't cornered anymore. Okay, we have competitors throughout eastern Pennsylvania. One of them is County Waste, they were sent a bid. One of them is Waste Management, they were sent a bid. Okay, County Waste was bought out by GFL in the last year. Waste Management is the largest company in the United States. Okay, we haven't cornered any market. Mascaro has been here since in the northeastern Pennsylvania since 1985. Okay, we are the largest private waste removal company in the eastern part of the United States. We have about 1,000 employees. We do about 400 million. These companies are 11 billion, 10 billion. GFL is probably in the neighborhood of 2 or 3 billion. There's other companies that are 4 or 5 billion. Mascaro is this when these companies are like this. The fact of the matter is, we're 5A1 D&B. Okay, we have the strongest balance sheet of any trash company in the United States. The strongest balance sheet. Okay, all right. We have no long-term debt. If you could hardly, I mean, if you believe that we run probably 500 or 600 trucks that cost $300,000, and we do not have any long-term debt, it's probably very hard to believe, but we don't. Okay, we're a very strong, well-run company. Okay, and this bid went out to 3 or 4 trash companies that chose not to bid. Okay, they chose not to bid because they don't know where their costs are going to be 3 years or 5 years. Okay, we bid on 3 years or 5 years. I would walk away tonight and you gave me a 3-year bid with 2 option years. So be it. I'm thankful. I want to do business 3 years, 2 option years, and 5 years from now in Clark Summit. I wanted to do business 3 years with 2 option years over the last 5 years. However, the COVID situation was basically a force majeure. Okay, that was so bad. Okay, so bad that we went up 77%. We went up in communities up here. Sugar Notch got a increase of basically 150%. They're much smaller than Clark Summit. 150%, and they gave us the business. Okay, they got 1 bid. There's a lot of places that are getting 1 bid, but it's not because we cornered the market. Nobody wants to put a signature next to a bid that's long term. They just don't want to do it. They know what's out there in terms of disposal and such. Okay, we will because we feel secure. Because we feel secure. But the thing is, on your end, do you take a 3 or 5 year bid? And our numbers for the 4th year and the 5th year, and then the 6th and the 7th are probably in the, I'm not even sure, but I think they're in the neighborhood of 7% or 8%. And the fact of the matter is, with inflation today, okay, nobody knows where the economy is going to be. They talk about the interest rates going down, but with what's going on, Federal Reserve is being very careful about that. We don't know what is going to happen long term with general inflation. However, We feel secure with the 3-year bid. We feel secure with the 5-year bid. And whatever you give us tonight, we'll be thankful. We hope to be doing business with you for the long term, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. We look for the long term, okay? So whatever you give us, thank you. It's a big contract. I just wanted to tell you that we don't have the market for it, but I recommend the 5-year bid. So thank you for your time tonight.
And thank you for applying. I mean, if we didn't have Mascaro's bid, we would have been in a pretty bad situation. But so thank you for stepping up and working with us going forward.
Absolutely.
So we're at a point where we need a motion or we need to table it.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the 5-year bid.
Okay, do we have a second?
Okay,
We have a motion for the 3-year bid.
I'll make the motion that we accept the 3-year bid option.
Okay, do we have a second?
I will second the motion for the 5-year bid. I'm sorry, I didn't get in time there for Josh. I apologize.
Oh, okay.
I will second Frank's motion.
Oh, okay.
that's okay. We go back. Okay,
So that way we can.
so we have a motion and a second for 5 years.
Okay, on the question,
No.
Oh, sorry. I thought we were, are we not?
Oh, I guess, yeah.
Question. And there are no questions, I guess.
Sorry.
that's okay. All in favor?
Aye.
No.
Thanks.
Jerry, what's your vote?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got it 5-2 or 3-2,
4-2.
4-2. I'm sorry.
42.
Order to.
That's right. I'm sorry.
Madam Chairman,
Okay,
I just want to say thank you for the Mascaro Company, and we're going to continue with the excellent service that, we want to provide. And this guy, if you have any problems, call him. You have my cell number. Call him.
Call me. They were here in the town on Thursday, Friday, and I always have a truck up here in the area.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Next slide.
Okay. Ready to the executive session, Virginia?
right, we haven't had any. You're just announcing since our last meeting. We haven't had any executive sessions,
Okay,
so we can adjourn now the regular meeting.
okay.
Motion to adjourn?
You mentioned we're in work session.
No, we're.
No, we're still,
Oh.
we're reconvening the regular meeting.
Oh, sorry.
This will end and then we'll do the work session.
A little slow over there, Randy.
I made a motion.
You make.
Okay. To adjourn, but it was a regular meeting, not in the work session, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So now we're ready to start with our actual work session.
okay, so it is 7:24. Okay.
Okay.
Gonna vote?
In attendance,
Okay.
we
We
have
don't need to-
Ms. Lopez, Ms. Simo is absent, Steve O,
Here,
Mr. Baskin.
Here.
Mr. Mitchell.
Here.
Mayor Kelly.
Here.
Mr. Jenkins.
Here.
Mr. Shields.
Here.
Here.
The first item on it is Mike Lucas, Parks and Volunteer Fire Company.
as you can see, we have more than just Mike.
Yes, good evening. I'm Mike Lucas, the president of the fire company. This is Tom Carey, he's our finance committee chair. And so I'm gonna let Tom kind of kick it off, and then we just want to give you some updates on the ambulance.
Thank you for having us. I don't know if you've noticed or heard, but EMS around the country and in Pennsylvania has been struggling. Not because just the volunteer issue, but also because of just the way it's designed and set up. With the hospitals and the healthcare system. So we were backfilling for about a year with Commonwealth. to help us fill hours that we couldn't get our volunteers to fill. We were notified in November with a 30-day out that they were leaving. We circled the wagons immediately. We started working together on a weekly basis, meeting and trying to develop a plan and how to serve the communities that we serve. With that, we created a business plan, which Mike's going to go into more detail and discuss and how we're backfilling and what it's going to cost us for the future. So without further ado, Mike.
So, yeah, as Tom said, we were kind of left in a bit of a void. We had a really good agreement with Commonwealth Health EMS, and they went out of business completely. So they were actually taken over by Pennsylvania Ambulance, which is another great local ambulance company. However, we worked with them, and we just found that it wasn't a great fit on both sides, I think. So we said, we really need to do something that we know is going to take care of our communities. So we said, this is really an effort that unfortunately volunteers are just down in. I mean, it's EMS call volume. So I've been a member for about 20 years this year. Actually, I've been a member 20 years. When I joined, we were doing maybe 600, 700 calls a year. Now we're up over 1,200 calls per year. The majority of them are during the day. Most people have full-time jobs, so it makes it very difficult for volunteers to be able to come out to do that. So we said, we know we have to start looking towards a paid option. We did start years ago with having some people staff our ambulance, and that went well for years. And we said, well, let's look at that model. So we said, let's look at hiring another staffing company. When we last had a staffing company in 2019, I believe it was, we were paying about $10,000 a month. We had a bid from a staffing company at $18,000 a month. So that essentially doubled. Pay rates for EMTs have nearly doubled as well. So it kind of went along with the market as everybody else on COVID, they're talking about the garbage contracts, all that stuff, everything that skyrocketed. So we said, yeah, this is a good short-term solution. So we want the staffing company to say, let's at least get our ambulance on the road, taking care of our residents, then we'll move on. So we did contract with the staffing company at $18,000 a month. And then we, in the process, had worked to get our own members hired, or not our own members, our own staff hired, and move forward with that. In looking at staffing, so right now as of May 1st, we are staffing entirely ourselves. We're trying to still do as many volunteer hours as we can, so trying to get volunteer members around as much as we can. But certainly during the day, we're staffing. Right now, we are fully staffed 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. We do have a very good staff from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Not every day, but we do have a good staff. Starting June 1st, we're going to be moving to 12-hour shifts to try to cover more of that, and even try to get some more evenings. The problem is the cost. So unfortunately, as the cost for EMTs have gone up, reimbursement is not. Reimbursement's been pretty much stagnant. So unfortunately, the number of calls we're doing it has gone up slightly over the past, since COVID. It hasn't gone up a huge amount, but it has gone up at least over the past couple of years. But unfortunately, reimbursement, since we started using a different staffing company or using a different staffing model, is not. So we're looking at probably our projections. This is going to be about a $70,000 per year loss on that. So we're doing everything we can to reduce that loss. We have some great people that are working on it, some great things in place to try to minimize that loss. But we want to be upfront with you guys and say, hey, this is something that we can't afford to take a huge loss over time, but this is something we're going to try to do, minimize our loss. And then we want to come back to you guys with real numbers, over the next few months and say, these are the actual costs, because I'm hoping that the projections are not going to be as bad as they look, but it's a tough industry right now.
And you may have noticed Factoryville is their ambulance is out of business now. Newton, Fleetville, Dalton.
Newton's ambulance is gone too?
So there's a lot of boroughs in the region that aren't able to do what we're doing.
So what ambulance service is covering those communities? Is that us?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a mix, and a little bit of a mix, and that's the other thing too. Is we want the other ambulances to be in service, because we want to be able to stay here and handle calls. The good and bad part about 911 is if you dial 911 and say our ambulance is dispatched, we have a legal obligation to respond if we can. So we can't say, sorry, we have to stay in Clark Summit today. So as much as we want those ambulances to stay in service, so we're available for the communities that we're contracted with.
I'm assuming you guys are asking for more money from the communities whose EMS have closed and that we're going to be covering, or no?
We haven't gone that far yet, honestly, we haven't, we've been trying to, the hard part too is sometimes doing that too, we don't want to take away from other fire companies either, so we're trying to work things as we can, honestly, for right now, we just want to get this up and running and see how we could do with it, and then before we could look at how we're gonna talk to the, any other municipalities too.
We're crawl, walk, run.
Yeah.
We're crawling right.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, if theoretical, if we had to close down the volunteer fire company and go with the paid one, how much do you see your costs changing?
So I did some research a while ago on that, and the model I used was Dunmore, because Dunmore it's a bigger community than this, but we cover 4 municipalities. It's almost similar to the number of residents we cover, and their budget, I think, is 7 figures. So I mean, they're looking at, upward almost $10 million, I think was their budget to staff people. Ours is about 300,000 to 400,000. So yeah, so it's a huge thing. So we want to keep volunteers as much as we can for as long as we can.
This is where I was going. I want to make sure that the newspaper and the residents recognize the fact that right now they're paying 2.5 mils for the fire company. 7 digits is going to be a lot more than 2.5 mils. So the price increases if we lose our fire company are huge. Just throwing that out there.
Okay. But first, I just want to say thank you guys for your service. I mean, the volunteer fire company does a lot for our community and everything. One of the things I was wondering about is how about like with collaboration and sharing responsibilities and equipment with other, local fire companies? Is that something you guys have been working with? I mean, I know there's been some informal arrangements, but is that something you're kind of exploring more?
Yeah, actually, it's good that you mentioned that. Yes, that is a big thing that we're trying to do, is we want to make this as much of a regional effort as we can. So we've talked to our neighboring fire companies about how we can make this a regional effort, so that number one, that reduces our risk and your risk, but also make sure that we're providing a service for everybody. So that is one thing that we've been really focusing heavy on as much as we can. The one thing I'll say, just to be blunt, is the volunteer fire service, similar to some other volunteer organizations, is there's a lot of stoicism and a lot of, well, this is the way we used to do it. So sometimes that mentality is very difficult to overcome. But what I'll say is, more and more people are realizing, hey, this is not a one horse town. We can't do it all by ourselves. So we do that. And actually, at times that we can't staff our ambulance, we already do have in place, the staffing or the mutual aid agreements, so that we can ensure that calls are being covered.
So if Factoryville, as an example, shut down their EMS, that's 24/7 they're shut down.
Yep.
So even at night or weekends, our residents or our volunteers are going to be helping to service those communities, because they can't, it's either all or nothing.
Right, it may be, fortunately now the Pennsylvania ambulances still has a pretty good presence with their paid component up in that area, in this area, and let's hope that continues to reduce that burden. But
Okay.
yeah, and this is something I know, there's been a lot of fire companies meeting about it, counties, all of this. And to be honest with you, this, I think it's certainly bigger than, this municipality. This is all over the state. So, one of the things that we've been trying to meet with some of the local leaders as well. I had a conversation when this first happened with Bridget Kozarowski, and trying to say, how can we do some things, but even on the county level. So certainly I know you guys know the federal, the state, even the county leaders. If you could put a word in on, hey, we got to do something from a higher level on this, that would be huge for us and for everybody. One thing that we're fortunate, Tim Rowland is one of our members too, and he's very big in the EMS industry, and he does a lot with, he looks at a lot of the EMS stuff, and the state gave a lot of benefits, which I think they should have, to police and to teachers. But the EMS system is really just as broken, and unfortunately that was left out of, that was left out of the tax incentives that I think, would have maybe kept more people in EMS and all that too. So certainly, that's a big thing. If you guys, any help that you could give us with the state and the federal leaders, that would be great. Any other questions on anything, or?
Madam President, I'm full of questions.
Go
tonight.
ahead.
Have you noticed that?
Absolutely.
How many hours before you're certified to be in the EMS?
So it's gone up over the years, unfortunately. You know, back when the ambulance first started, it was, you basically didn't need much. You just put them in the ambulance and drove them to the hospital. When I took it back in 2003, it was 80 hours. Now it's, I think, it's about 200 hours to be an EMT.
And who pays for that?
The person out of pocket, or we cover it for our members if we can. What the paid ambulance companies were doing is they started their own EMS academies, they're calling them. And if you go work for, say, well, Pennsylvania is the only one here, if you go work for Pennsylvania Ambulance, they'll pay you to go through the class, they'll pay for the class for you, but you owe them the next amount of time as an employee there. So I think it's a great thing that's gonna help build the EMS system, but unfortunately for us, that doesn't necessarily help us a whole lot. So we try to send people through EMT class. The big thing that hurt us with that is the Pennsylvania went to, instead of having just a Pennsylvania EMT license, they went to a national registry. And the national registry EMT has increased the cost, increased the training time, and it's made it, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, very difficult for us, because I've read what some of the material is, and they're almost asking people to diagnose patients rather than, when I went through EMT, it's like stabilize them, get them to the hospital, get them to a higher level of care. That's what we need. And I feel like the EMS system, and this is, I think, the same for a lot of systems, is everybody's so lawsuit happy, I think, with things, is they have to say, oh, well, what did you think their problem was? And kind of keep, making people get higher and higher certifications, and it's killing volunteers.
Putting it out of reach.
It really is, yeah. And that's very similar for firefighting as well. I mean, firefighter training has become very similar with the amount of certifications and requirements and all of that for that as well. And that's my opinion. I mean, some people say certifications are better, but in my opinion, with how close we are to the hospitals here, it's a 10-minute drive to the city for a hospital. Let's get them to the hospital and get them the care they need, not, trying to treat people out here.
Thank
Yeah. So we just wanted to kind of give you guys, we're not asking for anything now. We just wanted to give you guys an update, say where we're at. We definitely want to come back with some real figures. This is just the last day of month one of us doing this on our own. So once we have some real figures, we want to share them with you and say, hey, this is where we're at. Like I said, we're doing everything we can to reduce the cost and offset any of the costs with it. And we're going to keep working at that, because we want to make sure this is something that's sustainable for everybody.
What are the 12-hour shifts gonna be like?
So right now we're hoping to do 7 to 7, 12-hour shift, and then try to even cover maybe 4 hours in the evening. That about 87% of our calls are 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. So the overnight hours is a small amount that financially we can't afford to have somebody there. So that's when we're really trying to utilize the volunteers as best we can. Hopefully the volunteers are home at night if they could, wake up, come down for a call and help that way. And try to have the paid staff handle the majority during the day. I think that's a better, good system for us.
And is there a fund drive going on right now?
So we have our regular fire company fund drive, which so far has been excellent. So the regular fire company fund drive. We've talked about some other things, how we could fund EMS, and we're looking at some other options for that too to help fund it. Yeah, but our regular the municipality has been awesome to us for the regular fund drive. It funds a huge portion of what we need to operate. So it's huge.
Speaking of which, we'll be starting our budget season in August and deep into it in September. So if you have estimate, like if there's a chance that you're going to be asking for more millage next year, we're going to need to know ASAP.
Absolutely. Yes, we will definitely make sure of that. The other thing, while I have to just say at the time, just for all of you, I want to say how awesome the police department is in Clark Summit, by the way. Awesome. So and I don't make a whole lot of calls now just with my life and young kids and all that, but I happen on a few ambulance calls here and there. And I can tell you the police department is there usually first, and helping to take care of sick people. So like we have an awesome police department here. So Mr. Mayor, if you pass that on to the chief and all that too, the police department does, does so much for not even protecting the community, but helping out medical emergencies. Like they're great, and fire emergencies too. So, yeah. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
Update on this, and we certainly have a strong interest in our fire department. The whole group there that are volunteers, so anything we can do to
We'll
help.
keep you updated.
Yeah.
definitely.
Have
Okay,
have
good.
you thought about fundraisers and things like that too, other than, I know you always have the breakfast and that, but yeah, getting volunteers to help for that is another.
Yeah, it's tough, and that's the other side, sometimes it's like, we only have so many members, do we say, try to use them for calls, so we're trying to, and
Right.
yeah, it's always a sticky situation, but yeah, we want to do as much fundraising as we can, because we want to make sure that,
Sure.
we want to reduce the burden as much as we can.
Losing your tenant didn't help either, probably.
No, that was a big hurt, so if
Yeah.
you know of anybody looking for a commercial rental, it's still available. Yeah,
Yeah.
all right.
Thank you.
All right,
very
thank
much.
you, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And do we have anyone who would like to address council?
Hi, Franny Jones. The only question I have is at your next scheduled council meeting, when you readdress, the trash contract. Will you then tell the people how it's going to be paid? Like, to me, it seems like we're going with option 4, where we'll be billed by Mascaro,
Right.
like, will we know like how we're gonna pay it? Like, would it be at the beginning of the year? Could we break it down? I think being billed one lump sum, it's gonna be hard for some people
Yeah.
at the beginning of the year. I pay my sewer bill through the borough,
Right.
every month they take it out of my checking account. I love that, it's there, you don't have to bother with it. I don't know if they'd be willing to do that. There's a lot of people that don't want to do that. They won't, they won't.
These are the considerations that we really need to get a committee to talk about.
Exactly,
Will we
yeah.
bill quarterly, annually? Will there be discounts for seniors? Will we
Yes,
offer?
discounts for
VAT?
seniors would be nice,
I would foresee it being very similar to what we're doing with the sewer.
Okay.
I would foresee it, because that's really what I've been working with numbers to estimate, and we kind of have to start all over again if we're gonna look at other options, so. But I can't say that they're gonna have a vote by next week, but we'll have an idea.
Yes, it is next week, isn't it? The week's
Yeah,
away,
unfortunately,
so
it's
yes.
only a week away.
Okay, and like, I think our garbage collection is great. I don't have any problems with them, I hear a lot of people, and when they first started talking about this, and I had put it on the Clark Summit community page,
Yeah.
everybody came out of the woodwork, with all their
Exactly.
opinions and everything, and I apologize to Virginia, because I was telling everybody, well, call them, talk to the borough, give your input,
Yeah,
and then nobody came to the meeting, so
that was disappointing.
it was
We
very
wanted to
disappointing.
have,
I was very disappointed, because I even told.
Yeah.
Once the change takes place, whatever it is, we'll hear from them.
Well,
Regardless which way we go, we're gonna hear something.
Well, one of my
All your friends.
neighbors down the street, said, well, so what's gonna happen? Because she knew I went to the meeting. Well, what's gonna happen? And I said, it's gonna be a big surprise because you didn't come to the meeting. So that's how you make friends and influence people.
You're making new friends, aren't you? Franny?
Years here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Chair.
thank you.
Before we get into our agenda, the fourth item down under discussion is the fifth item down, the bottom line on the first page, Lou DeMarco with IWDA Engineering. I forwarded an email that came in, and he wanted to speak to, I forwarded the email to discuss the consideration of an inspector for pave cuts. Mr. DeMarco is actually here, so I'm going to ask if you would consider bumping that up,
Sure,
so Mr. DeMarco can come and talk to us, and then we'll go back to the normal order of the meeting.
We're here to talk about a struggle, but hopefully we're gonna help them struggle. I think you guys better do what you do. That's the first copy, and on top of that is the letter that Virginia already circulated. And then there's some resumes of some of our guys in there and some of the qualifications they have. And then there's 4 copies of the pave cut ordinance that we propose, or we start with as the draft and then work.
You
through
guys
it.
don't want to share in the
So I-
copies. of ordinances.
As Virginia said, my name is Lou DeMarco. I work for a geotechnical engineering firm at Dunmore IWDA Engineering. Mike Troy, the principal, is actually the author of this ordinance that started probably about 15 years ago down in the Lower Valley, Taylor, Music. And it really mimics the PennDOT 408 or the PennDOT, the standard where whenever you're working in the PennDOT right away, or in your case, the Clark Summit right away, it would mandate the utility contractor, the excavation contractor to have a borough designated inspector there on, the borough's behalf, paid for by the utility company. So it's really to watch out for the borough's infrastructure that's crumbling every day. The different utility companies work in all different capacities, whether they have their own crews, whether they have bid crews. And when they have bid crews out there, I've been in the construction industry for 25 years. So I've been on the engineering side, the inspection side, the construction side. And when it comes to the contractor side, they're there to do one thing, make money. And nobody's watching them. They're going to do what they can do to cut corners. And I've been witness to that firsthand. And I've been involved in all types of scenarios where, we're just fighting over who's wrong and who's right. So this ordinance is really drafted on the boroughs to protect the borough's best interest. We're there with trained guys that have different types of tools to measure different thicknesses, measure different densities, compaction, to really try to make sure that the borough is getting what they're supposed to get in the ordinance that they have. I'll give you an example. My background is also real estate, and I was part of a transition over at 609 Center Street in the borough. And there was a gas cut in front of that house. And I can't tell you how many times a night that I was there. And it was so deep because it wasn't compacted and it settled, that actually redirected cars into the ditch coming down the hill. And that's a direct example of a contractor not doing what they were supposed to do. They either put material back in that came out, they put saturated material in. It was just something that they were obviously not doing. Am I going to say and guarantee that this is going to solve every problem? No, but I mean, we're in Dunmore, we're in Carbondale, we're in German, we're Blakely. So all those boroughs, I mean, we've worked hand in hand with them to try and reduce, the callbacks for these different problems. And also, we work with these boroughs on their projects as well, because the same contractors that are bidding, the utility work more than likely are bidding their work as well. The boroughs paving projects, stormwater. So we've worked, on that side of it, we work with boroughs to provide them, the best deal we can on their work as well. It doesn't cost the borough a penny. Most of our boroughs, we build the borough, we wait until the borough is paid before we get paid. The ordinance as drafted allows you guys to increase the invoice by 10% to cover your administrative costs. But I defer to the solicitor and anyone else that would handle that part of it. This is where we usually start. A lot of times what we do is we take, if you guys have an existing pave cut ordinance, we incorporate that into this draft. We've had to make some changes to the draft. It used to be to where we would respond within 1 hour. We're not a perfect company and we're not going to pretend to be one. So 1 hour for anybody to respond is almost impossible. This is somewhat works on the honor system. The way, the theory of the ordinance is every contractor, when you're putting a bucket in the ground, you have to do what's called a PA1 call. Is everybody familiar with that? Yeah. So that one call, we get the one calls automatically forwarded to an email that we have created. It's one call at iwdaengineering.com. And then that one call tells us that contractor at some point in the 10 lawful dig dates is going to be out there digging in the right of way. So, we initially, when you guys, if and when you adopt it, we bring all the utilities in, most of the contractors, because it's the same group of contractors that are working throughout the area. And we bring them in and say, guys, we're not here to get in the way, but we're here to make sure that you guys are doing what you're supposed to. That's like step one, to put everybody on notice that this is the new way we're doing it. Step two is intercepting these one calls and identifying the person on the one call. I'll reach out to them and say, hey, Clark Summit Borough just adopted this ordinance, and I'll provide them after my phone call. I 99% of the time follow up in an email to say, here's a copy of the ordinance, here's how you schedule. We work a lot of times with the police chief or the DPW director, because if these contractors don't call to schedule the service, we don't have someone out there going around making sure, because we service 4 or 5 boroughs. So we do rely on honesty and resources in the borough that are always out there moving around doing something. So, the way our scheduling system works, we have an app that we use, and most of the police chiefs have my number. They call me and say, so-and-so is working on X street. I can pull up the schedule and say, we got it covered or we don't. When we first go into a borough, we even though it's the same group of contractors, we still have a group of people who try to push the limits and see what they can get away with. We don't look at the name on the truck. We don't look at the name of the utility. We look at the ordinance as it's written and enforce the ordinance regardless of who the work is being done by. It's worked very well. We try to keep track even after the work is done. We as a company try to keep track of the amount of time between excavation and restoration. We track that as much as we can. We're in with all the utility companies in terms of communication. We know who's who. So they've almost adopted us. I mean, some of the different sectors of these utility companies are working with our company to almost try and adopt one ordinance, because with like building code, it's a national building code, it's a state building code. So all these all these building contractors are following one code. Well, multiple boroughs, they get it in their hands and they do what they want with it. They write their part of it. And it's very hard from a contractor standpoint or a utility contractor to know what each ordinance is. So, that's certainly a challenge. And so we acknowledge that and we try to work with the contractors because there are cases where they can't follow the ordinance to a T, depending on the size of the pipe and how much cover is going over it. There's give and take, but one thing I can say is we never give when we can't give, because there's certain things that you have to do. And no matter how the contractor has to accomplish it, we never get involved in means and methods. We just tell them, if you guys can't do it, I'd suggest you regroup and come back when you can figure it out. And, the contractors have all done all of this work in the state right away. You're not going to get away with it on PennDOT, and you shouldn't get away with it in another borough.
They are getting away with it on PennDOT,
Yeah,
Well,
right across from the church.
who's doing the work? Who's doing the
It's a
work?
water company, right? Yeah, water company.
Yeah,
It's a subcontractor,
yeah.
but it's
Well,
bad.
and so one of the, and I guess I could just go back and step in. The PennDOT they do have full-time compaction requirements, but some of the inspectors, when you get out there, do have some leniency. We don't. I mean, we do have, we're an inspection firm, we're a quality assurance firm, so we try to really stick to our principles and work in the best interest of the borough.
It's a state road with 30 or 40,000 vehicles a day going over it. And it's like
Including
a
a
ski
few
jump,
others.
like a ski jump. up
It
there.
started
Well-
with it being sinking. And after enough complaints, they got the contractor out there and he overfilled it. And now, like Dave says, like ski jump, you have this big,
So
No excuse.
it's a reverse problem.
there's language in the ordinance that after so many days of not complying with it, that you can take and you can, as the borough, you can go and fix it and back bill the utility, stuff like that. We don't typically get involved in, like, we'll be the ones to reach out to, Greg Hunt, I'm sure you know Greg. Greg is the restoration coordinator for all of UGI for this area. So, I'll be the one to say, hey, so-and-so contacted me, or I was driving down the road, that patch needs to be hit. And after an email or two, as a, we're an inspection agency. We're not enforcement. We're not, so we then hand it over to the borough and say, this is what we've done. You guys tell us how you want to go forward. If you want us to oversee the restoration hired by a company, we would do that, but we certainly don't make that call to call a contractor in to come fix another contractor's work. We've never had that authority. We've talked about it with certain boroughs, but our feelings have always been the borough needs to be involved in that because it's their road and infrastructure at the end of the day. Enforcement, the big thing is enforcement day to day. If adopted, you would want to have a clear path. So our guys know when they have a problem, we cannot direct any contractor's efforts. So I tell my guys all the time, talk to the foreman. If the foreman's not listening, call me. I usually know who his boss is, or I'll come to the site and try to see what the problem is. And then above that, if they're not listening, the next step is contacting the borough representative who would have the authority to come to the site and, somewhat discuss the problem, correct the problem, stop the work, whatever the case is. It's worked. I mean, it's worked pretty well in a lot of the boroughs we're in. To the point now where we can almost just watch and they know that when we're there. I mean, it's again, same group of contractors working in the area, but it seems like when you get into a borough, I don't know if they think we forgot what they're doing or, we're not watching. So it's tough to get started, but once it gets started, it helps everybody. And even if you talk to Greg will say his callbacks are minimized too. So it's less work for him and it's paid for by the utility companies.
If I can ask a question,
Sure.
I know, like, for example, we have Pennsylvania American Water here in town, and when they do a major project, they repave the whole road, and we've never had any issues with that. So and the reason I'm saying is that we have two different pave cuts, the one patch and then the big project. Big projects have not been the problem, it's the patches. Currently, we charge $700 for a pave cut. Under your ordinances, your sample ordinances, how much would you be charging to
So
do
it's-
the same thing?
It's hourly. So what we've done with these contractors and the utility companies, we don't want to be out there watching the pipe work. That has nothing to do with the borough. It has nothing to do with us. So we tell them, we don't want to be there before you start backfilling. So typically the way it works is the contractor will call our scheduling coordinator the day prior and say, we anticipate starting to backfill 12 o'clock. So keep in touch throughout the morning. So then the next morning comes and the contractor's representative calls our scheduling guy and said, yep, we're on track for 12 o'clock. Most of the time on these big mainline jobs, it's 2 or 3 hours at the end of the day, at $60 an hour. We charge port to port, and that's an industry standard in the engineering world. So it really varies by the size of the project. This ordinance has language in it that also ties the street to a certain number of years. So if a street was paved, say 3 years ago, and they put more than 4 holes in a certain distance, then that contractor utility owner is on the hook to repave that entire street curb to curb, block to block. So to answer your question directly, Virginia, it varies based on the type of work being done and the scope of the work.
Another question. This is not the scenario now, but 10 years ago, when we raised our pay cut, UGI called and raised hell. We're just going to pass that along to the customers. So that's going to make it a lot harder for your residents. What kind of reaction are you getting in these municipalities where this has been happening?
From the
Because
taxpayers or from the council? Because we're getting,
we're looking to find out how the impact has actually been on the taxpayers. Do you feel that they've seen a huge increase in the cost of permits from the utilities because?
They've seen an increase, absolutely. Have they seen a huge increase? If the contractors do what they have to and communicate in the way they should, then they'll minimize the amount of time we're there, which minimizes the amount of time and money that they're spending. We deal a lot with the council, not so much the taxpayers, and I can tell you it's been well received by council, because we're watching for them when they can't, when they're trying to do more with less, we're doing their work for them. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but.
No, it does. It gives me the information I needed. Thank you. Well, I've had this discussion, you guys.
So is it, looking through this paperwork, it's referencing an ordinance, but I don't actually see an ordinance here. So is there something that?
You had it out for that you were sharing.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're big documents, so I didn't copy them for you guys. I have them. They were attached to the email when I forwarded it, and I can certainly get you copies if you want
And I
more.
can re-forward it as well.
Yeah,
The ordinance that you guys have it's a sample. It goes through a process and all the municipalities we're in, it goes through the process of working with, whoever they want to bring in. Sometimes it's the borough engineer, sometimes it's just the solicitor, sometimes it's, the roadmaster. The one thing that I would request on behalf of the contractor is try to stick to this version as much as you can, because it simplifies it for them. The contractors aren't against it. Where it becomes a real big problem is when something drastically changes from one version to another and they don't know it. So we communicate with Greg Hunt, we communicate with, the contractor, the project managers. We don't communicate with the foreman, but ultimately it's put on the foreman to make sure they're following it. And it's not communicated properly through the channels of the contractor or utility. So when we go out there, it's like, well, they didn't even know. And our guys all have a copy of the ordinance when they go out there. So they're equipped to do what they need to do, but it's a surprise to the contractor. And to that effect, I say to the contractor, what you're doing here or what you're asked to be doing here is doing it right. So it should be a hardship if you're already doing what you need to do. It should be done. And of course we get kicked back.
So just to understand what we would be considering, and this would be an ordinance you would give us your opinion on. If we were to adopt the ordinance, though, then to actually designate you as our contractor, is that something we would need to bid out or receive other applications for in order to make an award?
I'm going to throw out my expertise, which is, but I think we don't need to bid professional services. Would this meet the definition of a professional service? Because I'm not aware of other companies in your area.
There are, being honest, there are other companies in the area that do it. And again, I'm not speaking for the solicitor. I'm not an attorney and I have zero experience in that world, but the municipalities we've been in have not bid it out. But you guys will see through the process of whatever you guys feel comfortable doing.
Or you could waive the 3-bid rule.
How about,
And I wouldn't feel like I can answer that right now.
Okay.
You'd have to
Look at
That's
it,
fair.
yeah,
Just
just
curious.
we did not bid out the inspectors for the building code. But we did offer 2, and we did let the contractor choose which one. Have you experienced that with any communities?
No, because that would become a real challenge of you know, that when you're doing an individual residence, you can pick as a homeowner, but when you're doing, you know, just working the road, 2 contractors will be getting the email, 2 inspection firms will be calling, 2 inspection firms will be monitoring. So when you're looking at qualifications, there's 2 firms in the area, IWDA and another firm that does have the qualifications and the gauges, that the tools, right? That'll do the job that the ordinance tells you have to do. There's engineering firms that provide 100% visual inspection. Some of the work we do visually inspect based on the scope of it. If UGI is going out and they're doing a 2x2 hole because they have to locate their main, then our equipment, we can't put our equipment in there to monitor it. So we just go out and we visually inspect it. And there's different size compaction equipment. They'll tell you how many lifts you can do, but there's really only 2 firms in the area that actually do it. Mike Popoli is the author of this ordinance. He was approached years ago by, I believe it was Taylor, because they were having a major problem. And, you know, he came up with this idea. And so it would be hard as a selection. Now, I myself and Mike are actually working with some of the building code contractors to be able to offer this service with them. And we're trying to regionalize it ourselves to have a standard version. How successful we're going to be with that, I don't know. I mean, it's, you know, we're just starting that out.
So that would be something, maybe, I don't know, if by next week can give us an opinion on
Yeah,
that.
no,
but
absolutely.
certainly by
But
the
my
next meeting.
thought is that we do not, but I would want to, before I say that.
Yeah,
Also,
I
I think I told you,
ordinance,
I think I told you on the phone, tonight is a work session, so it's information gathering. Next week, we will decide what action, if any, we're gonna take. So this will be on the agenda for discussion next week. We might want to table it while we do more research or get a better answer, or we may choose to start looking, you know, right at you. So I'll know more next Thursday as far as direction, but you know, give us a week to talk about
2
it.
things,
Okay?
my card is attached to all the letters that were sent, so Mike signed the letter, it's just company policy. But I would be the contact if anybody has any questions, email, phone, it's always on me, you know, so I live by my phone, unfortunately. If anyone has any questions, feel free, either put them together as a council and send them over, or if you guys have a thought that comes up last minute. And second is, would you like someone from our company to attend the council meeting next week in case questions come up?
That's good of you guys.
Well, I think what we could do is we could let them know once we get our teeth into this and see if we're gonna.
How about if we put it this way, you guys have a week to look over the ordinances, look over the information, everybody got a copy of the references. Look over that to ask me questions. If you want me to do research, let me know what information you want. And then we can see where we stand when it gets closer. And I could let you know when it gets closer if we feel that we're really still have too many questions, but hopefully we can get them answered throughout the week via email.
And I would certainly encourage reaching out to Greg Wolf, the girl's name Shannon in German, Michelle in Carbondale. I mean, I would certainly get their perspective on it. Don't just listen to me, get their perspective. I mean, Greg Wolf he's an advocate for this because it takes it off of his plate. So, I mean, but we've been very successful in all. But I would let you guys hear that from them, not just from me, certainly.
Yes, you've been ordinance.
I do, I know Greg, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I mean, Greg, and God bless him, he's a guy that, the first thing he tells you is, I know nothing about paving other than it goes down and drive on.
Oh, yeah, no, right here, that's it right.
All right, well, I appreciate everybody's time.
Yes,
And everybody has my contact information, feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
All right, here's another copy, this is just. for
Are these emailed to
references.
us?
And,
They were in the email that I forwarded earlier, the end of last week. I can resend it to you.
Okay, thank you.
They're,
you.
they're like 18 pages long, so
Oh,
long.
okay.
They're big ones, so anybody, if you want to print it out.
Okay. I'll
You know,
read it in the email. I did that.
No problem.
You
You
know,
you don't have it.
Yeah, okay. Not a problem.
if you remember, we contracted out to have the roads paved. I know Jerry and Dave and myself, and you would remember this. And the contractors start paving in November.
Yeah.
Too cold, steam coming off. The blacktop was already turning cold.
Snowflakes were coming down.
Yeah,
We've already awarded the contract. It's going to be taking place within the next month.
well, the point I'm trying to make is that there was nobody there to watch. They did it.
Yeah.
And I drove by and I saw the truck the steam was coming up.
To be fair,
So that meant the blacktop was getting cold.
our engineers did do sporadic site visits, especially during that season, and did give them a hard time and did make sure that they came back and readdressed issues. But we were paying our engineers a lot of time for
Yeah.
that.
I think we had to get a guarantee. They did extend our guarantee
Yeah.
by a couple of years. I can't
Right,
remember.
right,
how
right,
many
But I
years.
think at the
That's right.
time, too, Frank, let me interrupt you just 1 second before I forget. We did make a motion that on future contracts, the deadline would be before September 30th.
Yeah,
So that part, we've eliminated, hopefully that.
We had talked about getting somebody to do this job.
Yeah.
But. where do you
this has
find
been
somebody?
discussed on and on.
Yep.
Yeah.
In the
for a long-
entire 18 years I've been here. And like I said, there's pros and cons, you know, when I sent out the original email.
Mhm.
Whatever cost they incur over and above what we're already doing is going to be passed on to the resident. And we do have a good working relationship with the water company and UGI. But on the other hand, we do have some sewer contractors that are not big names, and I can't get them back to save my life on
Yeah.
certain issues. And which is a royal pain. And we do have subcontractors that may not be as reliable as some of the major bidders. So, like I said, pros and cons, you need to decide whether the cost is justified to the impact, the financial impact on the taxpayer if it's justified.
Virginia, could you reach out to some of the communities? that-
Absolutely,
and
get
ask
references.
them What their opinion is? or-
Absolutely. I already made a note to do
Oh,
that.
okay.
And also, Virginia, that we would be reimbursed by the contractor that's doing the works for.
When they pay for the pave cut, right now, we get, every pave cut we get, we gotta pay payment for it.
Right,
They would reimburse us for whatever amount the new ordinance lays out, yes.
right.
They would, they're not supposed to do any work without the permit. We'd have to guess it and then go back and bill for the difference at the end, since it is an hourly rate as opposed to a flat rate.
Right.
So a little bit extra work on our part, but
Oh,
you know, if
yeah,
we decide to do it, I'm not
certainly.
saying we can't, but we can definitely accommodate that if we need to. It's,
Right. Okay.
So the bottom line is we need to decide whether this is feasible for us to do.
it's doable. The question is it cost effective?
Right.
Is it
Yeah,
the benefit to the taxpayer justifying the additional cost that they're going to bear? Because they're the ones that are going to bear it. But it's going to be the actual people that generate the pay cuts. So like UGI, if UGI is doing an emergency repair, it's on them. But if they're doing a new service, then they're going to pass that cost off to the resident.
To the
So
resident.
those are the things to think about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the thing, maybe, you know, talk to a few people along the way, see what they think.
okay, the next item for our discussion is Danny Farrell, the stop sign.
Right, we talked about the request for the stop sign on, excuse me, on the corner of, was it Sheridan and Harwood, I believe? Or not Sheridan,
Next one up,
right, Summit.
Summit.
Anyway, when we spoke last, we did want to reach out and get something from you know, from the police, and we
Right.
did get some feedback from the police that basically said that they have not had a single accident there. We did put up the speed sensor and the speed sentry, and we did get some reports back. So the question is, do we want to move this on for a vote next week, or do we want to just table it?
I think we should table it because I don't want to jump on something and then.
There's already three stop signs within 4 blocks.
Yeah,
So if you put one up there, it's gonna be 4 stop signs.
We had to install a post to put the speed sentry on because there was no place to locate it at that intersection.
Yeah.
We've already taken the initiative to replace, because the post is already there, to leave it there, and we're getting a children at play sign.
Mhm.
At the very least, we can do that, and
That
there's,
probably would be.
I mean, that's
best
the cost, what
direction
does it
to
cost?
go with
$50
that.
to put a sign up. Okay, so we'll
That
table,
would be our first step.
okay, we'll table it for now, and then we'll see if anything changes.
Okay. And then the PennDOT request for State Street.
Right, we've talked about it, and I know that there's been a lot of mixed feeling. The engineer did feel that it is not necessarily a safe condition to allow the parking on the shoulder. That's her report from Saturday, May 13th. On the other hand, the state already has an ordinance that says that they're not supposed to be parking along state roads, so
Why don't they
we want to
enforce
be
it?
the ones to enforce it. Right, I don't know how to handle this, so
Well,
it's up to you guys.
I think Frank had a valid point here in one of the responses that he made about
Mhm.
how can we force the people to park at the rear of their businesses if they don't want to park there? I don't know how we can do that either.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's in the realm of our authority or not. That's like, you know, if you have somebody that's got a handicap issue and that's the reason they park there, and you really have no business to ask them unless they volunteer the information, but if they park in front of their business, then
If you look at the pictures that were attached, like the one picture
Yeah.
shows where the request was for, there's actually 4 cars on the shoulder on that state
Right.
section. So it's not just that one address, it goes up and down.
Right.
And there's also one on the shoulder on the other
on
side.
the other side, yeah.
And same thing when you look at the other pictures, there is, like the overhead was a Google overhead, so this wasn't done by the engineer. The other
Right.
picture, when the engineer was there, 2 cars in that one. Another car over at another site.
I personally think it's opened up a can of worms, I really do. I know the dentist on the other side of the street. I know his patient's park on that little berm, for lack of a better description.
He's grandfathered, his parking lot would never be acceptable right now, but we can't go back and make him change it, he's
Right.
grandfathered
Mm.
in, so there is a legitimate need for. The parking on the street at his location, I think, because there's not gonna be adequate, where are they gonna walk from?
Exactly.
Can the borough, or can the state and that forces and just say, do it?
No,
No,
Has there been an issue here, Virginia, or is just a concern?
the state is having an issue because of the damage to the shoulder, and they had to keep going back and repairing it.
Right.
So they're
Okay.
asking us to take on the problem.
maybe if they repaired it right the first time, they wouldn't have to come back.
Exactly.
Well, the curious thing to me is when you look at all the pictures and you see all the cars on both sides of the road, why is that one spot a problem?
Yeah.
But the PennDOT cannot say, do it.
No, I don't believe
understand
so.
that. So we can say no.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna
Or we
fall
could just
on
say,
the borough's
We've
back.
chosen not to take action at this time, we're gonna watch it.
Okay.
Exactly.
So if you want to table it, that's gonna be my response to them.
Yeah,
I'd be in favor of
I'd be in
tabling it.
favor of that.
Okay,
Okay. me too. All right, the next one, the finding here on the website.
providers, we were talking about how we really need to update our website and have a company that not only develops it, but services it on a regular basis. So I started looking out, and I guess I started by Googling, website designers. And I got the top 13. So I went through the first 4
Okay.
and set up appointments to meet with the first 4. Had Zoom meetings, Microsoft team leaders or phone conferences with them all, showed them our website, asked them questions, and then asked them for quotes. And so far, I've only gotten 1 back, and I met with all 4 of them on the 19th. So I sent out a reminder today that I was waiting for quotes, but the one quote I got was, I'm not even gonna tell you how much it was. I didn't have to, it was because Jen's issues. It's just been really hectic this past week. She is back. She's back full time. We're doing great now. I will continue reaching out, and when I have comparisons, I'll present them to you. But I did want to let you know I'm working on it.
Also, Virginia, did we check with the high school on this at all? Because
They're not going to be able to maintain it. They can give us a new website, but they're really going to do. We're going to do our free website again. They might update it, but we're still going to be working with the same WordPress.
Well, WordPress is not the only platform though.
That's free?
Not that's free, but I
Oh.
mean, I think there's a significant difference between
Oh.
paying a subscription for a
That's true.
Wix, for example.
Yeah.
Which is much more intuitive than WordPress is
Mhm.
versus
Okay.
paying someone to actually maintain. So I think
Okay.
there could be an option and, let's spend a couple bucks on because WordPress is difficult
Okay.
to maintain. I wouldn't
I
wish that
am-
on anybody.
I have no experience with this, so if you and anybody else is familiar with other services where we could do we can maintain the website, provide that information to me and I'll call and get price quotes. But we're still gonna look at price quotes for redesigning the website as well, in which case I will reach out to the school if we're gonna consider that option as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, after the one I heard back from was Lounge Lizard, and the design cost was something like $37,000. And I thought, yeah, no, that's not gonna happen. That's not so then I thought, well, let's just see what others say to see if that's, reasonable. But if we could do that and get the school help, that's an option.
I know that they
I get you.
were very well
Use an
with
AOL.
the Veterans Park.
Say again, I'm sorry.
Veterans Memorial Day, they
Right.
sent down the full team, for Mr. Scavo's class. He was with them. They came down then the next day and they waxed the stones that they had put in. And they did a beautiful job. And also Herman and his son went down in the rock garden that they have, the river rock. They pulled all the weeds out of that. And they did agree that we can take the rocks out and just put grass, and then our DPW can then maintain just cutting the grass.
Mhm.
But I do have to say that Mr. Snyder has worked very well with, very cooperative in anything we need to.
Dr. Schneider, she's talking about the superintendent of the school district.
Yeah, he's been very, very helpful.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to reach out to him as long as, like, you
It's
don't.
much, I think it's much more, I think it's a better approach for us to say, let's see if we can get a student or somebody low cost to redesign a website on a different platform other than WordPress for us. And there's a
Okay.
couple of options.
Okay.
I'm familiar with Wix. There's others.
How do you
in addition to
spell that?
It's WIX.
WIX.
Um,
Okay,
I think that's a better approach for us. I think
okay,
we can adopt something much more user friendly than WordPress.
okay.
Good, yeah.
All right, then I have my walking orders on this, and I'll revisit it on our next work session. Okay, I don't see any reason to talk next week. I think at the end of June, I'll have some more information for
Then I
you.
would be fine.
Okay.
Sure. And then, our electric contract.
Yes. Okay, so what's going on is, the ABPA, no, I'm sorry, not the ABPA, the boroughs, the Borough Association, state, PSAB, has a contract with a company called APPI to do research and make recommendations at no charge to us on providers to get the best electric rates. Our contract is running out, I think, I forget, November, something like that. So anyway, they're asking us if we want to get them to start doing the research. I need Jerry's signature to move forward, so we would need to vote on this next week. I don't think there's any risk to us for having them look at it.
Oh, I didn't see this.
So if everyone's okay with that, or if you have any questions, let me know now or in the email, but I'm gonna have that on the agenda for next week.
Then the next, special event report will be here.
Yes, I think everybody pretty much already feels like there's no, I mean, it's the ABPA, we do it all the time. The only thing I do want you to know is the original request that you received said until 2 p.m. and they're changing it till 5 p.m. because they've got more musicians, I think, than they had originally
Right.
planned.
I'll make a motion that we approve the ADPA request.
And we can't actually do a motion at
Oh,
all.
yeah, we can't vote. I'm sorry.
But
I
we
apologize.
also,
Yeah.
really the decision when we enacted this was that if you felt that you wanted to pursue it, we could.
Yeah.
So if you guys don't feel we need to pursue it, I don't need to vote.
Okay.
What about, police presence? Will there be?
Their events don't need them.
They
They're
don't need
not, we're not, I mean, they do this
Yeah.
every June,
Oh,
every
okay.
November.
Okay.
And then the ice festival, and they'll coordinate if there's little things that they need help with, but generally, and they always pay if they do need police.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think they need them for this. They just need to block off Spring Street, the normal section.
Right.
Okay,
Next is the next step with the trash conversion process.
yeah, we were talking about how we have a lot of questions that we need to get answered in order to decide if we're gonna go with the billing, Mascaro handling the full bill or full billing, or what other options. And additionally, there's other questions. Are we gonna eat the last 4 months of the year because we already budgeted to pay for trash and then started January 1st, or are we gonna start at September 1st? We need to go through, we need a decision about how we're gonna deal with the small businesses in town, because right now they use, they put out some stuff and they also use the dumpsters. So, for recycling, so we need to kind of decide how we want to handle them. So there's a number of little decisions to make, and I thought if we can get a committee that I could meet with and we could sit down and I have some information to start us off. If you guys can then come up with questions that you want me to research, give me some direction, because I already think I know what I want, but
Do we not have a committee that is already, we have a recycling committee, don't we? Don't we?
we do have a
Is there not a
recycling committee.
trash committee?
There's not a trash committee. I mean, you could put it under like public safety if you wanted, in which case you're on it. With Dave and who else is on the public safety?
Finance, and you're on that too.
Oh,
I think I'm a recycling.
yeah. So I don't know. I
I'm
just
willing to
thought,
volunteer for it too, whatever.
okay, so we're gonna get Jerry to be on a committee. But of course, Jerry's on every committee.
I mean, there's certainly a finance aspect to this because it comes back down to our budget and kind of what we're doing.
That's
And I do have some questions about, I was looking at the 4 options as we proposed that, or as we presented them last time. And one of the things that I looked at again and did not make sense to me is we presented that option 4, where Mascaro would bill, was the cheapest option, but that's a 6.5% increase on the cost. So that did not make
But
sense.
the
to me.
cost
That was
of our
cheapest.
billing was gonna be more than the average.
Those are some of the details I think that we need to understand.
Yeah, exactly. That's,
To make-
I put together numbers based on what I thought, but I know that I didn't think of everything.
And I
That's what
guarantee that
really
the
want.
postage rates are gonna go up, so whatever that initial cost was, it's gonna increase.
Right. So whereas it's fixed with the contract.
Correct.
So that's why I really thought that a committee, we don't need 7 people on council all addressing every issue
Mm.
Sure.
every time. We'll never get a decision.
Mm.
I think we need a committee to come together and make a recommendation to council. And I think we need to get moving relatively fast on this, because we need to know, well, the budget starts in August. Mascaro is going to need time if they're going to pick up any amount of billing. And even if we're going to pick up any amount of billing, we need to establish the database as well. So 3 of the 4 options requiring establishing a billing database that we don't currently have.
And we need to find out, for instance, well, something that was on my mind was the rental properties. Like, do we have all of the current owners of the rental properties?
We
And their
currently have a new
current
ordinance that if there's 3 or more units, so for example, right on Main Street right here, the
Mhm.
corner of the 100
Mhm.
block, the top of the 100 block,
Mhm.
there's more than 3 units, so they have a dumpster.
Mhm.
So anything
Oh.
less than 3 units,
Mhm.
then we count that, right now it's just being picked up at the house, at the property, but both tenants are putting it out. I would feel it'd be more appropriate, like sewer, to build them individually and more fair. But again, that's not my decision, that's yours. But that is obviously something that has to be considered.
Now, Virginia, one quick question. Right now, the borough pays for all the garbage. So Mascaro collects garbage from everybody, even if they're not paying their taxes. If they were to pay, if they were doing the billing directly, what's their policy? I mean, would they leave
Okay.
people's garbage out or not take people's garbage or?
Thank you. I talked to Mascaro. Their policy is that they will take the trash, period. Okay, they are not going to leave trash behind. What they will do is they will done. And if they can't get a response, they'll get permission from us first, but take them to the magistrate.
Oh,
But they will
Oh.
not leave the trash behind. So that answers, and that's all included in their 6.5%.
well, we better make sure that that's in the contract, that we have the agreement.
And we can't sign a contract
We have to
until we
tell.
make this
Yeah,
decision. But
yeah.
yeah,
Because that's a
exactly,
good idea, because then,
exactly.
then that,
Bob, you were gonna send me information from Newton and I didn't get it yet. Would you please forward that to me?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, good, because Newton's already billing, so we want to at least start with what they're doing and see how it compares.
Right.
But so anyway, that was the information that Sam provided about if Mascaro bills.
And
So,
then,
And Bob does, Mascaro does Newton?
yes,
Okay, so it would be the same system, basically.
basically, yes.
the people that rent, are they getting billed or just their landlords getting billed for their property?
If it's a two-family home, then the property owner, because it's in the property tax, the only people that are paying are the property owners.
Okay,
Which means that if it's a two-family home, but it's one lot, they're only contributing for one unit,
it's
you might say.
considered one.
Right, whereas in fact, with like sewer, it's two living units, they each pay separately, so
Use.
they proportionately share the cost
Mhm.
of the sewer as opposed to paying for two units the same as one.
so we're just responsible for providing them with the database of who they need to bill, and then they're going to take care of the process of billing the resident.
If that's the option we choose. Our options were us doing the billing or us keeping it in the taxes and then just having Mascaro bill the difference or Mascaro billing the whole thing. So those are the three options other than just going to court. So any of those three options require us to establish the database.
So that's what the committee is deciding, is what is the best option.
Bingo.
Seems, finance committee, just because they already have their hand
Yeah,
on the money.
Well, I was talking earlier and I already know that I need to put together or start the budget for next year. At least I said, if I could put in the variables that we know.
right.
So we have contracts on HR, we have contracts on different, or on personnel, we have contracts on different things. We put in those contracted numbers and then everything else, I'll match this year's number. So we'll only see the reflection in the increase that we know. We're gonna know there's more, but that'll already give us an impact of how we're looking next year. Because I think that's gonna have a strong say over what we decide as well.
Oh, I definitely.
Yeah.
Have you gotten the committee?
We have Jerry.
I think, given that there's a lot of cost implications here, we should probably refer this to finance, but I would say, I mean, we should have, why do we have a recycling committee, but not a garbage and recycling committee? I mean, I made this point while Ms. Carroll was still here, that we shot ourselves in the foot on this contract by not taking our option. I think we need a standing committee whose job it is to
Exactly.
keep eyes on this contract at all times, to make sure that we are taking advantage of the options as we have them. Seems like an obvious opportunity to reformulate a committee that's not finance to do that. But I think in the interest of looking at all these numbers, finance needs to do that.
Yeah, that.
So we'll
that's-
start with the finance. Okay, that sounds good. And then we can see if we can get other volunteers if we need, if there's things that are off subject or, we're becoming overwhelmed.
Okay.
Okay,
All
right, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is,
Keystone Purchasing Network. What happened is, I was approached by a company that has, works with the Keystone Purchasing Network to have contractors, plumbers, mechanics, HVAC contractors that are available on call or to bid major projects without having to go through the open bidding process. Similar to, so KPN, the Keystone Purchasing Network, is comparable, they're stating, to CoStarz. So my question before we look at that and get it, even examine that option was, can we go with that? Can we consider it the same as CoStarz? Does it legally, by our solicitors, waive the need for bidding?
Yeah.
So I asked that of Mary Claire. I think you have something to say.
You know what, I actually don't have an answer on that tonight, but I know we discussed it.
Okay.
And that you're
Okay.
purchase for one, so I do want to look at it though and just make sure.
Okay.
It seems that it is comparable or in the same vein, but. I
It
just wanna-
seems like KPN is a nonprofit, so I think, and it does have extensive bidding, so theoretically it's the same, but CoStarz is through the state.
So if it were an alternative to CoStarz and we could elect to use it instead of CoStarz, I would want to know.
It would be in addition to CoStarz, and frankly, the only reason I'm looking at that is CoStarz doesn't have local contractors that'll come out. I've been having the devil of a time getting a plumber.
Okay.
We have a devil of a time getting a contractor that'll do a repair over at the DPW without waiting 4 months, So I like it for that service because there's somebody on call, they're preset
Right.
pricing, and we can just go with them and get it done. Because those kind of calls are emergency calls anyway, so I'm really not bidding that. But at least I know I have somebody that's already contracted to provide a certain response.
So we need your official opinion on whether or not we can
Right.
not bid
If-
things out if we take advantage.
If it meets the state terms, then there's really not a discussion, it's just, then it's just another option. Whoever's cheapest, go. But if it doesn't offset bidding, then we want to throw it out and just stick with CoStar.
I'll have a memo to council on that before the meeting next week.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the first time homeowners.
Okay.
assistance.
The county CDBG. And we need to talk about CDBG, and I know that we're actually going to, Josh and the Joint Rec Board want to talk about that next week anyway. And we have to decide how we're going to spend our money.
Yeah,
If you look at towards the end of the packet, we have information from NeighborWorks. And it's called the Lackawanna County Department of Planning and Economic Development proposal for the first-time homeowners. And that what they're asking is if we would participate in this, where our CDBG money, whatever we allocated, could be used to help first-time homeowners get a mortgage. So their question is, do we want to look at this further? Do we need any introduction to? Do we want the county to come and give us information, or do we want to say, yeah, let's put some money towards it? Because we know that Lackawanna County is supporting it, and we know that we don't spend all of our money anyway. Although we do have some pretty good ideas, I think we'll talk about next week. So if you guys would look over the packet.
okay.
Next week, we're gonna have to make some kind of decision on the expiring CDBG money, the 2018 money.
Definitely.
And I think we can use that. I don't think that's an issue, but I think we might have enough funds that we can consider something here. We'll talk about it.
Well, you have numbers to Josh, so.
Yeah, Mark Stats is gonna come next week. Mark is one of the co-chairs of the AWRB. He actually is an engineer. He works with, I forget what municipality, but in his official capacity as an engineer, he works with another municipality in the county, on their
Brandon.
CDBG. I don't think it's.
Oh,
Brandon.
not CDBG, no, I'm
It's,
sorry.
he works with CDBG administration in another
okay.
municipality. He's also the one that has all the details on some of the projects that need to be done, what they cost. I mean, I can tell you what I have said to him and the rest of the AWRB is, we have 4.5 years worth of money at our disposal right now.
Yeah,
Really look at the first expiring pool and then the 2019 money as things that we would want to propose. The park would want to propose ideas on how to spend at the center. That leaves us with, the park is going to have ideas for how we could take advantage of the other
That
three.
is money we could use now.
But there's definitely plenty of opportunity for us to consider.
Putting that.
Park's not gonna come ask for all 5 years worth of money next week.
Right. putting the money aside for the first time homeowners from 2018, we don't know that it'll be used by the end of the year. We might end up losing some of it. So let's hear what they have to say, but we could certainly consider using the 2018-29 chuck towards Hillside Park,
Yeah.
which we know is already acceptable. And then talk about with other money, do we want to put some of it aside for this purpose? So that'll be on our agenda for next week.
Okay.
So I've added things to the agenda other than what we just talked about, other than what was on here already, but I'll send you a new one when we get closer.
Ronnie. Ronnie, we don't even.
But we don't-
Do we?
When we're in work sessions.
No, but normally somebody says something.
We can adjourn. We can exchange our acknowledge attended.
Very good. All right, Bob, thank you. I'm gonna disconnect now.
All right, have a great